You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus.
I mean, it is more fun to believe in it. Hey, everybody. How you doing? This is Sam Elliott. Just letting you know that this is Trip Coltrane. Hey, everybody. Hey, you can tell it in my voice, but boy, oh boy. You know, I got wrangled by the voice monster this last handful of days, and you know, I feel fine. It's just I wake up. I mean, this is after getting the voice, you know, warmed up, lubed up. After, you know, when I first wake up, it sounds something like this. I mean, it is deep, it is down there. It's in the muck, in the mire when I first wake up. So this is actually an improvement. I've got a Sambucus elderberry organic zinc lozenge in as well. These things are awesome. Hat tip to my old roommate, Peter Tullio. Thoughts and prayers his way. He is currently evacuated from their house over on the east side of Los Angeles. I'm recording this, and we're in the thick of it still out here. We're fine here. We're safe at the dad pad where I live. In case you didn't know, here's some details. I live on the west side of Los Angeles. I live with three good friends of mine who are stand-up comedians, and it's called the Dad Pad. I moved into a place called the Dad Pad because none of us have children, so it's called the Dad Pad. It was called the Dad Pad before I got here. Anyway, so the Dad Pad is safe. We had a couple friends here last night who were preemptively evacuated just to be safe. I think they're back in their apartment. I do know people who have lost their homes. It just completely burned to the ground. Looks like a bomb went off and erased it from the map completely. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking what's happening. I mean, none of us were prepared for this. I mean, we are accustomed to wildfires and mudslides, and you know, the potential of an earthquake always looms large. Out here on the West Coast in Los Angeles, specifically California. But, you know, we knew we were getting a couple days of, you know, really severe Santa Ana winds. And boy, oh boy, did the fires kind of take us all by surprise. So, you know, collecting batteries and, you know, things like that can be donated. I don't know. There's lots of like mutual aid foundations and, you know, organizations and groups that will be organizing and helping. The city of Los Angeles will come together, already is coming together, already has, and will lift each other up. And I do believe that. It's more fun to believe, in fact. So with great tragedy comes the forging of great camaraderie amongst disparate types of people from all backgrounds and belief systems. They come together. And, I mean, what a perfect time for me to have finished the book, Humankind by Rutger Bregman. If you haven't, this is the book I've been talking about for, 2 months now. I finished it. This is a book that I could have finished much sooner, but I didn't want to read it too fast. I took it wasn't like a story book, like a fiction. So it's nonfiction. So I wanted to let it all soak in bit by bit and contemplate and think. And I did eventually finish the book, yes. But, I mean, it's, you know, almost 400 pages. But it does read rather quickly. But I didn't want to. And, you know, rumination is fun for me. I like to sit and think on concepts, ideas, especially ones that change my opinion about things. And this book has done that in a way. I've always wanted to believe and sense that human beings had goodness inside of them and that we were naturally inclined toward the side of good. And now you could be like, well, this is a subjective good versus bad, but I think we all know what good means. Okay, so let's stop debating the subjectiveness of good. Putting oneself not necessarily in the back seat, but not prioritizing oneself over other people. I think that can be considered good in a general sense. Having concern and compassion for people outside of ourself, that could be considered good. So, thank you to all the people who have been reaching out. Yes, expressing their compassion about what's going on out here, and I'm lucky, I'm fortunate, I'm safe. Like I said, lots of friends have been displaced. Some of them, their homes have burned complete to the ground. What will they do? I don't know. Right? We will find ways to get through it together. Comfort and community, I think, is important in times like these. And having finished that book, it is, I don't know, it's a healthy reminder that the future should be hopeful and not desperate or filled with fear. If we look at the true nature of who we are as creatures, as beings, we want and we desire deeply to have community with one another, to live in peace with one another, to love each other. That's what we all want. I mean, think about any movie you've seen where the villain, no matter how psychotic, it's always like, what was their origin story? They were scorned from love, probably, right? They weren't loved the way they should have been, and it hardened their soul and their heart, and they became, hell-bent on revenge or something like that, right? These are the great stories that have been told in theater and movies and books and plays. Theater and plays are kind of the same thing. But we are good. Everybody has that delicious, good human pudding inside of them. And these fires are still raging, and there's 0% containment on most of them. And, I choose to believe that the city of Los Angeles will come together in a way that will be uplifting and will be inspirational for generations in the future. We'll hear stories about how we came together, and they'll feel great about it. I mean, they won't feel great about what happened, but they will feel inspired by the reaction of the people that were here. Now, do you want to be in the muck, in the mire of it? Do you want to, I'm thinking more like big picture here, because we've talked about this a little bit about, apocalyptic scenarios, and there's a lot of conspiracies and things like that in the world of the paranormal. They kind of go hand in hand lately. Sorry if you hear that. I'm crunching on my Sambuca's elderberry organic zinc lozenge. I won't tell you who made it, but we're not doing free promo here, but it's nature's way. Anyway, there is that fear. Do you want to be here when the big one happens and all chaos breaks loose, and or the alien invasion, or World War III, things like that? I think the foundational myth of all of these stories is what Bregman points out in Humankind as a fallacy, and that is that human beings are monsters, bloodthirsty cannibals, being, having our murderistic desires held at bay and caged by civilized societal standards, and or even more specifically, religious laws that we've imposed to control the beast inside of us, when in fact it's quite the opposite. And these things are, there was a great section about prisons and things like that, and Philip Zimbardo, I mean, what a dumb dude. I used to talk about his book, The Lucifer Effect, quite often on this show, and was a huge fan of that book. And then after reading this book, I'm just like, I couldn't be more out on Philip Zimbardo and the Pranford experiment. That's me combining Stanford prison experiment, the Pranford. So the Stanford prison experiment that Zimbardo conducted, which was just all BS. All of it was bogus. And this guy was just he was just hungry for fame, attention, and notoriety. And he lied and he fabricated. And it turned into a thing that became fundamental and foundational in the way the modern world viewed human beings. And it negatively affected in a huge way the way prisons were run in this country. And I don't know. There's another researcher who kind of was on this same board, or was on this same kind of idea that influenced prisons, and sadly that person later in their life took their own life. Now I don't want to speculate why they took their own life, but is it because of what they realized society had done with the work that they had propagated, knowing that it was a fallacy, knowing that it wasn't accurate? I don't know, but there are consequences to the things that we do on such large scales, for sure. But we can come back from that. We can be redeemed. Maybe it's not too late for Zimbardo to redeem himself, potentially. We're going to be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you no commercials. Let's live that ad-free life together. We're going to be right back. Okay, so we're back. Welcome to the program. Just a reminder, recording this on, what is today? This is the 9th. My dad's birthday. My dad is 6 months exact to the day away from my birthday. So January 9th, I'm July 9th. So you're never more than halfway away from either one of our birthdays. In case you were wondering, if anyone in my family is listening to this, you're never more than 6 months away from the next great celebration to be had. I've never been a huge birthday celebrator of my own birthday. It's just never been like a thing I do. I don't know. Where will I be? I'll be somewhere in the country this July. I've started booking dates before I film another special, and I'll be in Go Bananas in Cincinnati towards the end of July. I'll be going back to Bloomington, Indiana, at the Comedy Attic as well. I think that's July 25th and 26th. So I think Go Bananas is like the 17th through the 21st of July. Starting to book those dates out. Hoping to get to Minneapolis. Hoping to get to South Bend, Louisville, North Carolina, and specifically Asheville, who, also has faced devastating natural disaster just a few months ago, and they are still in the throes of that. Let's not forget about the Asheville floods and all the other areas that were devastated by, I believe it was Hurricane Helene. So, we're talking about Bregman's book, Humankind, A Hopeful Human History. Can't recommend this book enough. In tandem with the telepathy tapes, can't recommend that podcast enough by Kai Dickens. These two things in tandem could bring you some joy if you're finding yourself in dark places, if you're finding yourself despondent, if you're looking for something to hope for, something to believe in. These are inspiring stories, and they potentially could help you find some light in the world that desperately needs it, maybe. If you're finding yourself shadowed by too many large events that find you losing hope, I recommend these two things. There is a lot of conspiratorial talk. There is a lot of scary talk surrounding the UFO, UAP disclosure. What's going to happen, the big fake alien invasion to try to take away more people's rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that you can kind of see playing out from a foundational aspect of, the incorrect truth about human nature that has been laid, that foundation that has been laid since we started settling down and having private property, domesticating animals, et cetera. We've already talked about that. I mean, it's like, if you're new to the program, it is postulated that STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, did not exist until we domesticated animals and men started boinking the animals. So thank you, men, once again, for bringing such beauty and wonder into this world in the form of sexually transmitted diseases. So And that's why, virginity of a woman is so important in religion and certain societies, because the rich men who were going to be able to take many wives or have sex with whoever they wanted, they didn't want to get syphilis and go blind because there wasn't penicillin or these other things that could prevent or cure sexually transmitted diseases when they first started popping up. So, yeah, just men being men. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not hope for men, because there is hope for all of us men. And that's that we have delicious, good pudding inside of us, okay? And we just have to tap back into that delicious, good pudding. So that decent, delicious pudding inside all people. Now, there's also an interesting aspect that maybe we could touch on too. I know in general men don't like to discuss their clairvoyant abilities and or natural gifts of, empathy, intuition, etc., as much as we ascribe them to maybe women are better at them. And you might be able to trace that back as well to the split that happened between men and women in society once we really settled down and women became, quote unquote, the caretakers, and men became the providers, kind of thing, right? So I think it's important for men to realize that you have access to these gifts and you have these natural abilities, that there's no separation between, perceived or assigned or chosen gender, or physical sex when it comes to these things. Men can do this too. Everyone can do it, okay? So everybody's got this decent, delicious pudding inside of them. And we need to tap back into that. And I think Bregman is trying to help us understand and identify that pudding is actually abundant. And are there cases of people with personality types that can, really make you question if that pudding even exists? Most certainly. There's this great story, and you've probably heard about the 1914 in World War I, when the German soldiers and the British and the French soldiers on Christmas Eve started singing Christmas carols to each other on the front lines, and then on Christmas celebrated Christmas together. Now, some of you might be like, well, Christmas is a Christian holiday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not the point. The point here is that all of these soldiers took it upon themselves to stop, killing each other. And, hours earlier, they're trying to kill each other. And now they're singing Christmas carols together. They're smoking. They're like, hey, do you have tobacco? Do you need some cigarettes? Do you want some of this wine? Do you want, these things? And they're sharing and they're talking. They're becoming comrades. And they realize, oh, maybe the propaganda that we have been shown and given and fed to us has been wrong. That all these, British and French soldiers aren't these godless heathens, and all these Germans aren't, these monsters looking to put babies' heads on stakes. They realize that they're just people. And these are people being controlled by the powerful people who have decided from one way or another to do something, to make land grabs or to try to acquire more power or province or whatever it is. We are the pawns, I suppose, of that. Now, this is when you can also start going down conspiratorial, slippery slopes. And there is something that we've known to be true our entire lives, and that is that the multitudes and the sheer numbers of people who just want to live life with love and in peace with their neighbors and just want to have things provided, the basic necessities. Those far, far outnumber those who have been sucked into the idea of greed and excess. And in the Western world, we get convinced that excess is actually what we need as a bare minimum. You need to have your own house. You need, not only that, you need to have a vacation home. And if you don't have those, you're not being successful. You're not successful enough. You're doing something wrong. You should be ashamed of the fact that you don't have more than you need. You need to live a luxurious life. Champagne and caviar every day. That is what you deserve, and that's what you need. And if you work hard enough, you'll get it. I don't know. Capitalism kind of does that. It distorts our view, right? So how does the world of the paranormal fit into that? Well, it is, as George P. Hansen would say, it's anti-structural, and the trickster, outside the bounds of the structure, of the dominant structure and the system. It's in that liminal space. It is threatening. It is challenging to the status quo, specifically the capitalism system that wants us to be everybody out for themselves to achieve as much as they can, right? If we get to the heart of the matter of all paranormal things, and we love the idea of idealism over here, and that is the connectedness of all things through consciousness, that's when we realize there is no true separation. And what is good for me is good for you, and what is good for you is good for me. And we is me, and me is we. And the paranormal shows us through connectivity, through consciousness, that we are more than just our physical bodies. That physical death isn't final and or real in that way. These are temporary vessels for a much bigger game that's being played. That we have a connection through ESP, telepathy, clairvoyance to the future, to the past, to the now. The time isn't linear. That's what those things show us. It shows us the true nature of our existence and our reality. Creatures like Sasquatch show us that there is, in fact, much more out in this magical world than we are able to capture and define. Now, I never thought I would say this, and I can't believe I'm saying it now, probably for the first time ever. I hope we never capture Sasquatch in a definitive way. Because Bigfoot does something for us. Oma teaches us that we're not the boss of everything. We don't get to identify, explain, and dissect all that is around us. There are things that remain outside of our grasp of knowledge, of reason, and of understanding. That, to me, speaks to the mystery that is at the heart of paranormal supernatural phenomena. And that's why it's so thrilling to spend a life investigating, researching, trying to understand, because it's a mirror like everything else. The deeper you go into the paranormal, the deeper you dive into trying to understand yourself. And I think that's a beautiful thing that I know I could do more of. And I love doing it. And I think if you're listening to this program, you feel the same way. Other people dive into things that are different than the paranormal to find the mirror, to learn more about themselves. Some of them, it's physical training. Some of them, it's the stock market. Some of them, it's sports and statistics, things like that. Some of them, it's hiking, getting lost in the mountain. The mountain can teach us a lot about who we are. And God, I love the mountain. And the mountains here are burning. So we shall see. The mountains here have burned before, and they will most certainly burn again. But they will remain there. And, we'll see what new, vibrant, fresh beauty springs from what right now can be considered heartbreaking and tragic destruction. There is something fascinating about the time that we're entering. Whether it is the snowballing speed of disclosure of UFOs, UAPs, ETs, or NHI, non-human intelligence, or non-biological entities, NBEs, or out-of-body experiences, or astral projection. Tarot readings from a relative stranger who knows just way too much about your life. These things are happening more and more. In my opinion, these things are happening more and more. And and more people are becoming aware of it. More people understand it. More people are curious. And the more people who are curious of the paranormal, the more the paranormal shows up. I mean, we know that. Careful what you look for, because you just might see it. And not only that, it sees you. So, and once it knows it can see you, it keeps finding you to look at you. And sometimes it's in a time when you're like, hey, man, I just don't want to be seen right now, man. Okay. Like, sorry. If you feel like there was a weird audio cut there was. I had a fit. I had I had an unexpected fit come up. So I got too excited. But anyway, yeah, when we look at the paranormal, it looks back at us. And the more people who are looking into the paranormal or opening their hearts and their minds to it, the more the paranormal decides that it will be in the world. The more the paranormal decides to present itself and to show itself. So to be clear, I hope we never capture Sasquatch or Cage Oma. It would be a thing. It would be a situation, I believe, and always has been anyway, where they decide to be seen themselves. It's always a situation where they decide to let you see them. They decide to let you hear them. It is their choice to participate in being observed. And is this because of an interdimensional nature? I'm not sure. But we know that. Well, that's strong language, but to know that there's an interdimensional nature to our existence is fascinating, it's wild, it's exciting, and I believe that it's not only is it likely, but it's just darn tootin' true. It's just true, darn tootin'. So yeah, I mean, because we talked earlier this week, I believe, about leaving the reeling in the anchor of doubt and skepticism, and in sailing supernatural sea with wild abandon. That doesn't mean that you should just not be safe about it, because you certainly should. You don't want to fall overboard and lose yourself. But hey, we don't need that anymore. We don't necessarily need the proof when we know something. We've experienced something, we know it to be true. We're going to be right back after this short break. Thanks for being here. And howdy diddly do. I just watched the Simpsons. What was it? The Christmas special, the new one this year. I haven't watched an episode of The Simpsons in probably 15 years at least, and or a new one, and I really enjoyed it. God, I enjoyed it. I used to love that show, obviously 30 years ago when it first came out, or whatever it's been now. I loved it and would watch it every week. I was just tickled by it. I love when there's people you can count on. It's like, oh, y'all are still the same, aren't you? I mean, I love growth in character as well, but that's not a thing. That's not a show where you're expecting much growth, right? You're expecting these characters to be who they are and put them into different situations, and the results will be, predictable to a certain degree, because their personality types, it's like Seinfeld. There was no growth. They didn't grow. There wasn't character arcs. They were the same. Dickheads at the end as they were at the beginning. Self-centered, wrapped up, just selfish people, and that's how they behaved. And it was funny to watch them interact with one another. And they found each other in this crazy world, and they were friends, or as much of friends as you could be in that situation. They were friends. We can say that for sure. Anyway, so I don't know what got me on that tangent. I think it was because I was thinking Ned Flanders. Howdy diddly do, neighbor, or whatever, right? He would always, that's what he says or something. So it made me think of that. Anyway, yeah, so the 2025 we're off to the races. I made bold predictions earlier as well last week that, some things were going to happen in 2026 so that we'd likely have full disclosure. And then by the end of this year, the majority, a vast majority of people in this country and the world would openly, without embarrassment, say that they know aliens are real and UFOs are real, and etc., without being embarrassed or ashamed or worrying about, being judged harshly for it as foolish. And, the scientific world has a long way to go in that, specifically the world of if you listen to the telepathy tapes, I think it's a great program that kind of walks you through some of the trials and tribulations people are up against when they're in positions of quote unquote authority and power and licensed, right? Like being able to have people revoke their licenses. And, I got, actually got a message from a friend, like I was going to listen to the telepathy tapes, like you said, but, the spelling stuff seems to have been debunked a long time ago. And it's like, oh, okay. That is still the prevailing thought, and it's sad, and that's the narrative that's out there. And I think the telepathy tapes is going to do a great job of changing that. It's really a transformative podcast, and it's transformative on many levels. And I think it could personally transform you. I think it will. I think it will I think it will play a big part in transforming the world in the way they look at autistic nonverbal people or difficult speaking autistic people. And not only that, it'll change the world of perception of the paranormal world, and who knows what may come from it. We are just sitting back and waiting to see, because it's going to be a wild ride. And I think season 2 will come out at some point. I don't know when, but we look forward to it. Again, can't recommend it enough. But the world will judge you harshly at times. I've been, diligently editing and rewriting and working on the book that I'm writing called Shapeshifter, about my journey into comedy from, being raised super religious, becoming a comedian, and then getting swallowed by the paranormal. Basically is what this book is about. And so kind of a comedy paranormal memoir, I suppose it might be, I if we want to say that. But there are, I'm looking back and, updating some stories, getting rid of some things that I don't want in the book anymore. My life has changed in the last 5 years, things like that, right? Like I've had other experiences that I think maybe need to be put in there, blah, blah, blah. So I look back 15, 20 years and I think about, my willingness to share these stories with people, specifically about the woman I know who could shapeshift. And it's shocking, the difference now. And maybe, of course it is, because it's been, probably 20 years. Probably roughly 20 years now. But, the world has opened up to it more, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the world has opened up to it more because people have been willing to talk about it more over the last 20 years. And the more, like we said, the more people who talk about these things, the more the world opens up to it, the more it shows itself to other things, to other people. So that's all we can do. We can keep moving forward. We can keep sharing our experiences, because then they become shared experiences. And, I truly believe that. A person doesn't have to have been there to share the experience. Every time someone shares their story with me, I'm now part of that story. Every time I share my story, whoever hears it they're now a part of that story as well. It's strength in numbers. It's comfort in community. It doesn't matter if someone believes or not. Now they've got it in their head too, right? The world of that story has grown. And maybe that's why certain, extremely popular podcasts, their world is much bigger, right? And the stories from those podcasts are more real to certain, might be considered more real in a way, or like a movie, right? That millions and millions and millions of people will see. That story is more real in a certain degree, in comparison to another story that maybe only a handful of people know. Because the world of that story isn't quite as big. It doesn't make it any less true or real, but it can be perceived as such because of a quantity kind of thing. That's interesting. I don't know. Interesting to think about. I don't know how long this episode's going to be because, I'm not in my top physical form currently. But, I have a lot to be grateful for. this has been, I think there's 800 episodes of, I don't think it's been 800 episodes. So that's why I'm not doing a big, I've got an idea for the 800th episode, because I think this is 30-year bonus 329. And we've had 465 experiences. So we got about 5 or 6 more before we get to number 800. And I'll be doing a fun thing for that, hopefully. Basically, it's going to be a love letter to the paranormal and a love letter to the listeners. And, about it's more fun to believe, because it truly is. And just as a teaser, it's going to be, I wrote the first words of it last night, and I was thinking about this. And it's like, it's more fun to believe. It's more fun to believe in the paranormal, and it's also more fun to believe in each other. And it's more fun to believe in love. And it's more fun to believe in fellowship. It's more fun to believe in everything. Almost everything, right? It's not more fun to believe in genocide. It is actually shocking to believe that would be more fun. To believe in that. So it would be shocking to me. But it is very real and currently happening again. Didn't mean to take a dark turn there. It just kind of happened. But what we have here is we have a world that is primed and ready to jump into the new age. The one thing that I find disconcerting is the world's willingness to jump on board with any conspiracy theory immediately. As the LA fires have been unfolding, there's been all kinds of conspiracy theories that are happening, and about the cause and what it means. And it's like, we're like, what are we doing right now? We're in the very middle of the beginning of something unfolding, a tragedy, and now we're already coming up with reasons why, who did it, and things like that. And it's like, can you take a moment and let's be people and try to help each other, and then sort this shit out once we are able to be outside of it a little bit. Okay? But that's the world we live in. But the positive side of that coin is that people are more willing to obviously be open to ideas that don't traditionally match previous ideas. So what that tells us, people are more willing to believe in things that they might not have believed in before. And that's everything that is the paranormal world. So, who knows? Who knows what the future brings? But we're going to wait and find out. And I guess we don't have to wait. We can live in the present simultaneously. I heard something really fascinating. I think it was from the telepathy tapes, one of the kids, that past lives aren't past lives. They're simultaneous lives. So yes, but reincarnation is real, but we're living all of these lives simultaneously. And God, I heard that. I was like, oh my God. That resonates with me in such a way, because I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think I was saying some crazy shit on here about a meditation I had where I thought that I could see into my other current life, like my soul had been fractured or split, and that we were sharing a soul, but we were different people. And I felt crazy about sharing that. But now, maybe not so much. Well, not so much at all, in fact. I don't know, something interesting to consider. It's hard to wrap my brain around that. But with the nonlinear nature of time, there is no past and there is no future. It's all just simultaneously happening. And yeah, that's going to do it. I think we're going to call it. Thank you for listening. Just a reminder, patreon.com. There's other stuff over there. There's ad-free stuff. I put up videos over there too when they're available. Ad-free as well. And what else? Yeah, thinking of you during these times. As of now, we're safe and sound out here in Los Angeles, California. I will keep you posted, of course, if any of that changes. Many, many friends of mine, have been displaced, evacuated, and, we're praying for them, and we're going to see what we can do to help out here when this when this all shakes out. And there are things you can do. You can donate water, you can donate resources, you can donate, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'll keep you posted on all that as well. But yeah, in the meantime, I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you find a good book to read, a good podcast to listen to, and maybe even write a book yourself, make some art, do some things. This year's going to be bonkers. We got some exciting things that we've never done before that we will be doing here on the show. I've got some great interviews coming your way as well. Starting next week. But we're look forward to seeing you at a comedy show out on the road sometime. And in the meantime, I'll just have to see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.